All right. So first of all, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. My first remark is going to be to Lee Dang. Actually, two remarks. The first one, please remind me to tell my children not to go for PhD in maths. So that's one. And then the second one is, you don't like money? We're about to talk about money. I have never met somebody who doesn't like money. We're going to talk about money here today. We're going to talk about business, the business side of things, of AI. I know we've talked about the technical parts of it, the journey. But what about the money? What about the value? Why are we doing this? What are companies out to get? What are founders going to get out of this? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So my name is Abby. For the past 20 plus years, my work has been centered around helping companies realize the value of technology and product investments. So this is your lane as well. We were talking about that. And right now, and I have my notes because I'm a mom of 4, which means my brain cells are not the best because I have 4 kids to manage. So I always have to have a little bit of notes. So right now, we are seeing a massive investment in AI. I was reading on the markets this morning, and the top companies, the Googles of the world, the Amazons of the world, can anyone guess what the CapEx spend is projected to be? Just the CapEx. I'm not even talking about anything else, just the CapEx. Yeah, yes! How did you know? I know. So the point here is, we are seeing a massive investment in AI across all levels, not just the big companies, but a lot of leaders are still asking the same question. What is the measurable return, right? A lot of organizations track things like AI activity, how many people are deploying it, time saved. But from where I stand, the real value actually shows up when something in the business actually changes. Let me define that. So I always like to define things and so that we're all level set. So we're talking about maximizing ROI. What does ROI mean? Like, what's the value? What are we talking about? Return on investment. And when I talk about return on investment in this sense, and a lot of companies are asking, but where is the value? Where is the ROI? Let me tell you what they're asking for. They're asking, how much revenue is AI generating me in addition to my revenue that I was doing before? So that's one. Are we making more money? The second one is, are we saving money? And then the third one is, are we shipping products faster? And then the last but not the least one, I'm sure there's a few more that I have, is around customer outcomes, right? Companies want to know, are we making more money? So I find it helpful to think about AI value and ROI in 3 levels. So the first one, this is the framework that I've used, that I keep using even in my work, is just around the activities, right? Like the AI usage, the experimentation that we've all talked about. And then the productivity is the second layer, which is, are we getting work done faster? But guess what? It still doesn't translate to money. Now, the level that a lot of leaders are ultimately caring about is the economic value, those things that I just mentioned. And that is when the revenue, the cost, the customer outcomes actually change. So the real questions become this: how do organizations move from AI activity and productivity to real economic value, especially when you're now in production, right? And I have a distinguished panel right here. So let me introduce you, not in order, but, actually it's in order. Nikil, right? Yep. He is the CEO of Achira, who is helping companies manage cloud commitments and infrastructure economics. And I think your guy, Jeremy just did that. And then I also have Mark, who works on distributed cloud infrastructure at Hedgehog, supporting modern AI workloads. And last but not the least, Hassibil, who leads Cielara, applying AI to real enterprise workflows. So each of them, they actually see a different part of how AI moves from experimentation, whether it's the TCO analysis, and all the way to production. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the biggest question here, guys. So any one of you can take this. When you look at AI systems that are already running in production, where have you actually seen measurable business value?
Yeah, I think probably the most directly measurable value that I've been seeing is frankly for internal operations that are now using AI that did it before. And the main reason is because that's super easily measurable. If I'm able to quantify that, hey, on this particular opportunity that's being worked through a sales cycle, I'm saving this many hours in salesperson time because the CRM is getting auto updated. If I'm saving this many hours in customer success manager time because their customer is having an agentic interaction on the website itself as opposed to having to schedule a meeting. These are all things that are pretty easily quantifiable in terms of just headcount costs divided by hours looking at the opportunity. So that's at least easy to quantify. When we start looking at stuff like features in products, you kind of need to put on your product manager hat a little bit and kind of figure out what is the actual outcome being driven here for the end user. And that's not that's not an easy thing to solve. That isn't a new problem though. That isn't a problem that's that distinct from analyzing in kind of a legacy SaaS, what's the value of this particular feature? Because most of the time, a lot of these AI workloads, at least for non-AI native companies, they're kind of sprouting up as new features, new functionality, rather than kind of cannibalizing existing features. So I think it's relatively simple to get that measure internally for internal use. I think when talking about how it's integrated into a product, it's a little bit more complicated, and it really does kind of rely on some of the muscle that's been built up in terms of product management and kind of product analytics that tools like Post-Hoc and stuff kind of can help you get at least metrics around. But tying that to business value is a question that's really more bespoke to each individual business.
I'll take a crack at it. So I'll keep talking probably throughout this about one customer story in particular. So Zipline is a customer of ours. They do automated drone delivery. So and right now they're scaling out in Dallas-Fort Worth. But if you're watching a Cowboys game, you see a commercial for, say, Buffalo Wild Wings, you order through the Zipline app, you're going to get your wings in less than 10 minutes on average. If you order the same wings through DoorDash or Uber Eats, 30 to 60 minutes. And the reason they're able to do that is because drones are using airspace instead of roads, and they're doing it all autonomously with AI.
I think with our experience, we are seeing there is a two breed of companies. One breed of companies is AI native, or they try to be AI native, and they try to make sure that all the workflows in their enterprise is getting automated with a new way. They are not getting kind of boggled down with how it is implemented 10 years back. They are getting most success into kind of thinking about feature of the work and how all the way from feature requirement to the production, how they will get kind of into a one value chain and the decision traces, and they could optimize around it. And then another company, another breed we are seeing is they are thinking about one pillar, they try to optimize it, and that actually creating the imbalance into their kind of current workflow. And they are getting a temporary spike, but after a certain time, they are deciding to kill that. And unfortunately, second bucket is 95% today, and based on MIT and other places. So the success mostly who can think that how this future of work look like, and then reinvent that like a mentality. That's where the success actually defines into the enterprise.
I think what I'm hearing here from the three of you is, a lot of organizations, they're seeing AI activity, right? They're seeing it, they're getting productivity, but sometimes translating it, I think you made that point, into sort of like a longer term business value does take time.
I think it's change management, right? I'll give you a really simple example. My parents are asking me, how do I use AI more frequently, or how do I learn to use AI? And it sounds stupid, but literally what I do is I go on my mom's iPhone, I remove the Google Chrome icon from her home screen, and I replace it with a Gemini app, right? It sounds stupid, but that is the internal transformation that so many businesses need to do. You're not just changing technology, you're changing human habits. And human habits, they don't change that easily. You need to make it easy, you need to make it obvious, you need to make it repeatable. It's not sexy to talk about, frankly. It's way more easy to talk about the latest model and all the cool capabilities of what I can crank out in Claude Code. But a lot of the capabilities exist today. It's just getting over that human aspect internally to make the change happen.
Agreed. I do want to kind of double click a little bit, Mark. So Hedgehog, your company focuses on distributed cloud infrastructure. You support modern workloads. And from that standpoint, what sort of design decisions have the biggest impact on the cost and performance of the AI systems, especially when they're running in production? Maybe if you have an example, it could even be the example, the drone example that you have already.
Well, I like to say that if you're building an AI application, you should really have an AI infrastructure strategy. Like anybody in the room, if you're doing this, you should really think about it. And that strategy, it really boils down to, should I rent my AI infrastructure or should I buy it? And if you're renting it, for sure, you're gonna want to use you guys to sort of ensure that and make sure that you don't get bill shock. But if you decide to buy, you're likely going to save upwards of 70% on your infrastructure costs. That's the Zipline example. So the question then just becomes, okay, do I have the capability to run my own AI infrastructure at a third of the cost of renting it from Amazon or Microsoft or Google? And that's really that's the core problem that Hedgehog is addressing.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna double click that with you, Nikil. We were just talking before the panel about what your company does. As you know, a lot of companies are scaling AI. We just talked about $1 trillion just 10 minutes ago. Now, when it comes to cost of GPUs and inference, those things grow really quickly. I think Lee Deng, I'm not sure if he's still here, but he talked about, I think in 1999, when he was the biggest customer of GPUs back then, but now we know that's like exponentially grown, especially once AI is in production. What should leaders in this room, what should they actually measure to be able to understand whether it's creating value? Or are they just spending compute costs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty simple equation. Just one of the variables is not necessarily trivial to measure depending on your business. So there is the cost side and there is the return side, and together you're getting an ROI there. Now the cost side, luckily that's pretty simple. If you're renting from Amazon, Microsoft, Google, that's your bill you're getting every month, right? You can look at the cost for your GPUs, you can see exactly, okay, this is how many inference cycles I'm running or how many tokens I'm using, and this is what the cost looks like. And there are ways that you can actually work to bring that down. Our chair offers one way, as a selfless plug there. But in terms of the return side, that's a little bit trickier. And that's kind of what I was talking about initially, where that comes down to your individual business and sort of getting the measured value of each of those tokens. Some businesses, that's relatively simple, where you can basically like click into your Salesforce and look at like, oh, here's like the dollar value of this opportunity. Here's the inference I needed to do to support this customer. Like divide one number by the other and you're getting an ROI. For other customers, it's really not that simple. I think does that really answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think he wants to. Do you want to add to that?
I think the ROI side, the biggest problem I saw, or kind of I'm seeing the trend in the industry is what AI is supposed to do. Like AI is a non-deterministic thing. And every time you ask ChatGPT or Gemini some question, it will answer. Even you don't know what is the confidence level and what is the accuracy of that answer. And most of the AI project fail because business has no way to measure it. No way to measure it and no way to track it, that the decision is being taken. Is it accurate or it is not accurate? I think that's why we are seeing most of the kind of values there. And who is going to, the reasons Cloudy Code co-work or Cloudy Code is being so popular nowadays, because it gives a glimpse of the futures, that how a human will be working in the futures. That mostly means if you are a business, you're running the business, you need to think about what customer is asking, what feature you need to build, how fast you could deliver that, what is the cost of building that, how fast you could deploy it to the customer, and when you deploy it to the customer, can you measure your cost of goods sold? That means what is your cost of running the business? And that comes with many things. That comes with your infrastructure cost, token cost, capacity cost, everything comes together. And whoever going to invent it going to be $1 billion business, and that's what actually we are targeting. Basically, what is the new operating system need to look like, where agent and human are working together, And in an organization, we assume that there will be one human and there will be 10 agents working with them as an assistant. So how they will work together, that's the one problem. Second problem is your product manager coming up with a product spec. Then your enterprise architect need to go and translate into a design document. And then your developer need to build the code and it needs to go to production. And then how that optimization layer will look like. And AI native, and is kind of, I think, new frontier. That's what the ROI and everything depends on. Who is going to reinvent that? And you see the glimpse of it, what's happening inside Anthropic today, how they are building the new product. And then if you speak very closely with the Meta and all other people, they are also realizing, so they are enforcing everyone to use all those tools and try to reinvent that how they will all collaborate together. And that's what kind of, like, I think everything is heading towards.
Yeah, story of my life. You just said it. Actually, I am going to also ask you something. Since we're talking about ROI, cost, value, let's talk about vibe coding. I think the last panel talked about vibe coding, right? Who here has vibe coded something? Pretty much, I don't know, 80%, 85% have vibe coded something too, by the way. Some things, if you think. I love vibe coding. You and I were sharing how we love vibe coding. So let's talk about the code itself. Is it a waste? Like in the next few years, for example, what's your thought on that? Like, how do we treat that, all that coding, all that, everybody 80% in this room doing vibe coding? How should we interpret that code for the next, I would say in the nearest future?
I think the way to think about is a soft code and hard code.
Yeah.
And that definition came from Joey Beda. So in a way, like you could produce any number of document today. You could ask Cloudy Code you could have an idea, come up with a business plan. But you don't know how to implement that business plan. You could ask like a Cursor, Cloudy Code, or Gemini to write you a vibe code. And I actually build a 300,000 line of POC over a weekend because I want to explain to engineering team what they're supposed to building. But that's a soft code. That's not a production code. And if you try to run your business with that one, you will be a news headline in today or tomorrow. So you will see that your production database is exposed, your customer information is in a public, and if you open Twitter, you will see all over the places. So I think that's the directions market is heading towards. Like an idea is very cheap, building something is very cheap, but how do you run a business with it? Like that, take that code, run it to the production, and what other things we need to invent. Like this is the he's in the space of cloud cost optimization, and he is the space of networking. And I was in a day one in a Azure ARM API. I was building the Azure Management API in 2008, 2009. When cloud got created, that makes the compute very commoditized to everyone. Anyone could launch any capacity in anywhere. That created a second category of the governance problem. Is connectivity is one, and making sure that you are not launching a couple of thousand spot instance because you have an error somewhere in your script. You picked a wrong configuration and number up wrong, and you forget to turn it down. And once in my life, I got surprised by getting a couple of $1,000 bill from the AWS because I launched a very large spot instance and forget to delete them. So this is the governance problem that is coming into it, and this is a known problem, a known pattern into the industry. So the code is becoming similar to like in 2008 or 2005, you cannot get a server, you need to order a physical server. Easy to make it so easy, anyone can call an API and launch any number of server. Then connectivity becomes a problem, cost becoming a problem, new governance layer emerges. Now code is become commodity. The second problem is how do you govern that? How to make it a production system? And that's what we did not invent it yet. We are just seeing a glimpse of it, that what will be in the future.
Adding on to that, what I'd say is just practically speaking, jagged intelligence is very unintuitive for humans, at least the type of jagged intelligence that we see in terms of Claude Code, Cursor, whatever kind of coding model you're using today. And not only is it unintuitive when it's static, but as you know, new models come out, the harnesses change, those capabilities are changing like really quick. And frankly, I don't think there's an academic way to understand and predict that, at least not an easy, like understood academic way. You kind of just need to dive in and like experience the models and stay up to date by always working with them to kind of understand what is the character of that jagged intelligence, what tasks can I trust this with, what tasks can I offload it, and how do I best work with it. So it's hard to predict because it is rapidly changing, and I think it's a mistake to assume that you can get a good idea of exactly where it's going to go, or hey, in 1 year this is what the model's going to look like, because I think the jaggedness of these models is unintuitive, and how the jaggedness evolves is probably even more unintuitive.
I'll pile on. So this concept of trust and the concept of hard code versus soft code. So yeah, we're in the business of infrastructure, network infrastructure in particular. So we think a lot about infrastructure as code. And so that's an example of hard code, right? Because there's zero tolerance for error. If there's even a 0.1% error in your configuration, you're likely going to either have a security vulnerability or just a full-on outage. And there's numerous examples of this. So that's very different than a soft code example, like, hey, I'm going to use AI to build a website or a mobile app, right? Maybe the UI isn't exactly the way I want it. Maybe I keep tweaking it. So I think margin for error is a big consideration in whether you trust AI for a particular application.
Thank you so much to all three of you for bringing different perspectives to that. Let's talk about something around like a pattern that I see. I talk to startups in my day-to-day as well. One of the patterns that I see is, a lot of ROI, even when I talk to leaders, I talk to CTOs, is, in terms of the ROI, it actually depends on how widely AI is adopted inside the workflows. So we cannot talk about ROIs if it's not adopted. So let's say even a company, you're a company, you're leveraging AI, but you've paid for the AI, the infrastructure, all of that, but nobody's adopting it and the adoption is low. How do you go from that to that? How do you go from that low adoption to actually getting the business value and maximizing the ROI from that? Isn't that tricky?
That is tricky. This is, once again, I think it's human psychology. If anyone's read the book, like Influenced by Robert Cialdini, would highly recommend that book. But like so many of the principles in that book apply to this situation. Thinking about social proof, like people at the company seeing other people using it and being successful in visible ways, that's one huge way. Having getting consistent value out of it and making it so that there is a sense of commitment to actually using these models at the corporate level, at the job level. These are all really important factors, and these are psychological factors. This isn't a technical problem. This is a human problem when talking about changing the behavior of humans who work at these companies.
You want to take? Okay, I'll go. Yeah, so we're a software development team. We've got 10 software engineers, and every engineer on the team has the right to choose the tools that they want to use, the IDEs that they use. But most everybody uses AI in some way, shape, or form. So the question is, one, how productive is that team? I'd say very productive. And then two, like how much has using AI or vibe coding contributed to the productivity of that team? And how do you get the team to use more AI to get even more productive? And so the answer on that, I think, is just like everybody on our team, yeah, they want to use AI as much as possible if it works. And people will typically just compare notes on, okay, how good was that code quality? Like, did it get you 60% of the way there, 80%? Oh, only 50%. But I'd say there's still plenty of room for opportunity just on a simple thing like writing a security white paper right now and just trying to generate good architecture diagrams with AI. I'm like, no, it's still not there. So I think a lot of it is just word of mouth amongst users on how well is it working and does it make me more productive or not. And as models improve, and they will, as more and more people talk about it at events like this, more and more people gain trust to use it more.
I would love to read your paper, the security paper. Yeah. All right. So I have a quick question for the audience, actually. So raise your hand if your organization already has some AI running in production. So maybe 60%-ish, 50%-ish. Okay. So now for these teams, because I don't know, do we how much time we have left? But for the leaders in this room that just raised up their hands that are running AI workloads in production, and they want to maximize their AI ROI, maybe for the next year or for this year 2026, what is one thing they should start doing and what is one thing they should stop doing? This is a gift to the audience.
I have a very opinionated like a view on that one. If it is 3 months back, I will not express that. But I can express that because recently Gartner, just last week, published a paper basically saying every enterprise should be working on that way. So the biggest problem in the enterprise today, workflow automations and everything, the context is how we are going to create a shared context across your engineering team. You have a product manager, you have a customer facing person, you have an engineer, you have a production people. The concept of capturing all the decision traces and make sure that it's been passing from one person to another person, and it could be one agent to another agent, is the biggest problem today. And if we can build that layer, that your human assistant, all the agent, and all those information being captured and being shared across the kind of organization, that is the biggest ROI you will get in next 6 months to 1 year. Because in that case, individual model capability is not important because they are getting sunsetting around 70% or 80%. It does not matter that you are picking Claude or you're pressing OpenAI. Context is the king in and specifically share context. Like how your customer support people will bringing it to your product manager, bringing it to your enterprise architect, bringing it to your next person into the pipeline. And all those decision traces is being captured and then shared with your next human or next agent. So that's my opinion.
Context is key.
Context is key.
I'll cheat. I'll say there's 2 things you should do and 2 things you should not do. So the first one is you should control your data. Right, we heard earlier that really data is your moat. Unique sources of data are where you're going to have AI applications that really deliver long-term value. So control your data, make sure that it's private, it's yours, it's your moat. And then the second thing is control costs. Right, the costs on AI infrastructure is significantly higher than general purpose infrastructure. Those are the things you should be doing. And then the 2 things you should stop doing is don't assume that all the data you put into public cloud is always going to be secure and private and yours. That's 1. And then 2, don't assume that it's a level playing field on, hey, there's 3 options in the world. There's the big 3 cloud providers, and we have to optimize that baseline. There are more options.
Yeah, I think anecdotally what I've found from at least a product development perspective is it's useful to kind of just think about where is the crappiest legacy UI that exists in my product and how does AI make it better. I'll give you a very simple example. Documentation. No one's going to read pages and pages of documentation anymore when the AI makes it way easier. And so baking that into your products, your developer docs, stuff like that, that is such an easy win. That's such an easy one. I really think the main thing to avoid is basically not staying up to date and kind of just closing your eyes and not trying to make a change, because there are productivity gains to be had both for your internal use case and your end customers, and laziness or just not wanting to change is not an excuse to not try and explore and try and get those productivity gains.
Awesome. Well, I think maybe we have time for one question or so, maybe from the audience. One quick question. Anybody have one quick question in the audience that we can answer for you? Just one quick one. One quick one. Oh, there's one over there. If you want to project.
So this was a question for Hassibil. Just in context is important. How does what is the process to acquire that context? Is it like basically like just kind of have a document repository? Like how does one basically go about collecting the organization's content and making it available to the system?
Just to give you an example, like even 2 year back, every time your developer is building a feature, you used to create a Jira ticket for them. Now developer is building the feature using a prompt. How do you capture that intent? What you are validating? And if you don't capture that intent, how quality assurance people is validating it, and what the code reviewer is validating it? How do you capture that? So that's exactly the future of work, if you think about. So your product managers coming up with a bunch of writing a product spec intent, and that becomes your enterprise architect next kind of like a passing the ball kind of thing. So that's share context or kind of capturing that intent is the kind of the actual value that is going to be unlocked next if you're able to build that. And there is a manual way of doing that. You need to mostly think about how to capture that intent so that like next person validating it has some shared know that what was the intent that artifact is being produced. And then it could be you capture in a Git or you capture into another information there, or similar things that we are building, like how do you kind of help a human or agent to kind of work together and then take the a different process all the way from customer arcs all the way to the production, how they are actually working together, both for planning, both for validation. So it could be a kind of a opportunity to kind of adopt a new technology or opportunity to build something so it fits into your workflow in your organization.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do want to say, I think one thing we can all agree on is using AI is just the beginning, but actually maximizing the value is a conversation, is a journey that we're all on right now. So I want to thank the panel. Thank you so much. And for all of you for being a part of the conversation. Thank you so much.